Hi, hey, hello, how's it going? It's Emily. And today we're going to be doing a vlog reading some books for Magical Readathon. Now, some of the books that I have planned to read for Magical Readathon, I think I have, is it 5 prompts? We're going to be reading 3 of them today. A couple others fit in different vlog ideas, so I wanted to just go ahead and have the rest of them in this vlog, but I'll go over the prompts and everything as I'm reading the books, and then at the end I'll kind of do a quick wrap up of what we did in this vlog and then how some of the other video plans that I have relate to the Magical Readathon prompts and kind of where those will fit in. But these didn't really fit in with other vlog plans necessarily, so I just decided to kind of group them in as their own Magical Readathon vlog. So we are starting with 0 Days by Ruth Ware. I have the audiobook out from the library, so I need to make sure that I return that. And I absolutely adore Ruth Ware's narrator. I have a physical copy, and I don't really have a physical copy of literally any other Ruth Ware book because I love her narrator so much that I don't know. I'm never going to read these physically. I mean, I could immersive read, right? That could be an option, but I love her narrator so much that I can't see myself doing anything other than just listening to the audiobook and just letting Imogen Church take me for a ride. Imogen Church is the narrator's name and has actually narrated, I believe, all of Ruth Ware's books, if I'm recalling correctly. I think she's narrated every single one. And the chill and the creep that she can add to her voice and the tension that she can add to her voice in tense moments. And I think her narration style is just absolutely perfect for Ruth's writing style. Anyway, I absolutely love these on audio. So if you ever happen to read any of her books and love audiobooks, maybe give the audiobook a whirl and see if you love the narrator as much as I do. Anyway, to this one specifically, so the only Ruth Ware books I haven't read, at least as of the start of this one, was this one, and then I haven't read the Woman in Cabin 11, like her most recent release. So I haven't read those two, so I wanted to go ahead and fix that. And I found this at Goodwill for, I think, $1. So I wanted to go ahead and get this just to make sure that if I'm prioritizing my physical TBR, that I was prioritizing a backlist book from Ruth Ware that I still have not read. And this one is following Jack. So Jack and her husband Gabe are kind of freelance workers. They get paid by companies to kind of test their security out. So essentially they'll try to break into companies' security, whether it's their computer systems or like physically break in. It's kind of a mixture of the two things. Like she does the physical work and kind of physically breaks in and we'll go through certain systems, test them, and then kind of aid his ability to hack into their system by putting certain things. Anyway, whatever. So they're kind of a team, and he does all of the computer work. She does the physical testing of these security systems that companies will pay them to test out. So we open with kind of a typical thing that they do for their clients. They're going through one of these jobs, and she's breaking into this place, kind of setting things up for him to be able to hack into their computer systems. And, she is actually caught, and which, in theory is kind of what should happen, right? But, she's caught through some mistakes that she's made. So anyway, so she's thinking about how to write this report for this client and say, so I was caught and there were some things that you did right, but I was mostly caught because of my own mistakes and how to do that. And so she's trying to tell the police that breaking in is her job, that she has a contract to do so. But the person that is supposed to be her 24/7 person that they can call to confirm that they did in fact hire her to do this is not answering the phone. And Anyway, ultimately she's arrested, and she tries to call her husband, who does not answer. And she's like, well, that's weird. I know he is probably at home up waiting for me to get back, but maybe he just was too tired and fell asleep or something and isn't hearing his phone, whatever. So she's eventually able to get out. And the reason she's able to get out is because she is, I say vouched for. There's someone on the police force that she used to date in her early 20s who's kind of a piece of shit. And she tried to report him as being a piece of shit, but he's a police officer. And so the police precinct did not at all take that seriously. In fact, they made her life kind of miserable for filing a report on one of their officers. And so, he's ultimately able to confirm that that is what she does for a living. But anyway, or confirm that that is who she is, who she says she is, whatever. So she's eventually able to get out. She drives home and finds her husband has been murdered. And for some reason, the reason she gives is because she's just in complete shock, which makes sense. But her instinct while in shock is just to kind of stay there and do nothing. And it takes her a long time to call the police, but eventually she does call the police. And, they ask her they bring her into the station. They've asked her some questions. They've brought her to her sister's place to stay with her sister for a little while because her home is still a crime scene. And so they want her to come back to answer some more questions. And then it's clear at the beginning of said interview that she is under suspicion. She's not being arrested or anything, but it's clear that they're suspicious of her. And that's when she gets an email notification that a life insurance policy had been taken out for her and her husband to the tune of £1 million. And she certainly didn't get this insurance policy. She can't imagine that her husband got it and hadn't mentioned anything about it, especially one that was that big. And so she's assuming that she has been framed and that whoever got this insurance policy is wanting to frame her because, that could be her motive, is to get the life insurance money with her husband's death. And anyway, so she is on the run because even though she had a lawyer on the way, she just wants to get out of there. She knows that they're going to see this email. She knows that they're going to perceive that as her motive and have that potentially be what they need to actually arrest her rather than just holding her to ask her some more questions and kind of have a suspicion that she might have been involved. And so she gets out of there and is now on the run. And anyway, so I love Ruth Ware's writing. Her characters don't always make the best choices, but you can kind of see their logic. You can see their thinking because you're in their head. This is all first person, and you can see their logic. You can see what they're thinking. You can see why they're making these mistakes, and in some ways, some of them are kind of understandable, or they know, this could be a really stupid mistake, but I don't know what other options I have. Anyway, it just makes for a really compelling narrative, and I have not been able to stop listening to this. I literally started this morning, and I'm... how many pages in? Of course, that page doesn't have a number on it. In the ballpark of 170 pages in. And it's actually divided by days, not chapters. So we're a few days after. So I hadn't actually mentioned what prompt this is for. So this is actually for the prompt to read a book with a day of the week in the title. And I recognize that this does not actually have a day of the week in the title, but having at least days in the title was the closest that I was going to be able to get with my physical TBR. Other than continuing with the Thursday Murder Club series, which at least the series name has Thursday on it, but I'm reading that with my partner, so I didn't want to jump into that one just yet. And it is, again, as I mentioned, the chapters are not, traditional chapters. It's just divided by, okay, here's what happened on Saturday, here's what happened on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and we're just going through the week, right? So, I figure this is at least close enough to having a day of the week in the title. So that is what's going on for the moment. I'm going to keep reading this, and will I be able to stop listening is the question, because again, this has just been utterly compelling so far, and I love listening to her audiobooks. Again, like, her narrator is just so good. So I'm going to keep listening to this. I want to do some fun projects today and just work on some different things, maybe work on my outline for a novel. So I want to do some different things like that. I do need to apply for some jobs, so maybe I will apply to a few today. Maybe I'll just apply to all of the ones that I'm looking at and have tabbed. Maybe I'll just apply to all of them tomorrow. We'll see. But yeah, I'm going to keep going. There are a few house things I need to do as well. So I'll be listening while doing all of those things, and we will check in once I have read more of 0 Days. So let's chat through 0 Days by Ruth Ware, and let's try to do it before my battery runs out. We'll play a fun little game. I read this in under 24 hours. In fact, I started and finished it yesterday, like after I woke up, and then finished it before I went to bed. It was just so compulsively readable, listenable for me. Again, I love her narrator. I honestly think if I were reading these physically, I would probably enjoy them a little bit less. And I think part of it is, so it's first person narration, like we are in our main character's head. So I can definitely see criticisms of some things getting repetitive. So there are a lot of repetitive things on our main character's mind. So she's on the run. I kind of gave the general gist of why she's on the run, but she's on the run with essentially no money or access to money. And I mean, if I were in that situation, that would be something I'm constantly worried about. And so, or, she's injured herself. And so either she's going to constantly think about that because that's constantly affecting her, or it would also seem, so it's either repetitive or it would seem unrealistic because she's doing all of these things and doesn't refer to the fact that she's injured or think about the fact that she's injured. Like, that also seems unrealistic to me. So there's some things that are a bit repetitive. You also need to get over our character's kind of initial shock and inability to call the police. Now, I can't personally say, fortunately, how I would react if I saw my partner dead and having bled out. I have no idea how I'd react. I hope I never have to find out how I would react to that. I could imagine my reaction, even through shock, is not to sit there for a while. And so, and of course, some decisions that she makes in terms of running away from the police, maybe some people think of that as not a smart decision. Anyway, so some things are repetitive. Maybe she doesn't always make the greatest choices, but I still just found this so compulsively listenable. And as I said, I think I in part put that down to her narrator. And yeah, another thing in here, so a lot of Ruth Ware's books are the kind of closed door type of mysteries, claustrophobic, things are happening and people are trapped and they need to get out. That's not the case here. This is definitely a cat and mouse chase kind of scenario. And so it's set up very differently. Kind of the tension is very different because a lot of the tension comes from, people are closing in and she needs to once again get away. So in that sense, it can also be a bit repetitive because that's the main source of tension. She does not in here do as much as she usually does to kind of draw you in different potential directions about who's ultimately responsible for what's going on. And maybe that will put some people off. Maybe they like to have, several potential suspects cooking, and then we kind of get further and further into the mystery. And that doesn't really happen in here. I feel like at least certain aspects of what's going on, at least as far as who could potentially be involved, we're not really leaving that hanging for a long time in this book, I'll just say. And so we're not really pursuing different threads of, well, could it be this person? Could it be that person? Could it be this person? Anyway, and I'm obviously not going to say any more than that. I'm not going to spoil anything. But I could see some people wanting more of those things happening to kind of draw our attention away from who's ultimately responsible. And so it can be a little predictable in that sense, because it wasn't really a surprise, really. It's just a matter of, can she get away? And can she get away long enough to be able to show what happened and kind of build a case about what happened, so that when the police find that, maybe she can help herself. Anyway, so I understand all these things and can see these criticisms, but again, it says something that I wanted to keep listening to this all day yesterday. So anyway, there's that. So the only Ruth Ware I have left to read now is The Woman in Cabin 11. So at some point, I will do that. But yeah, so we're actually going to be jumping ship to another vlog. I'm actually bouncing around between different vlogs quite a bit this month with just the way I've ordered things, especially since I had a solid chunk of the books this month on audio from the library. So I've needed to kind of prioritize those and front load those, but those applied to different vlogs. So I've kind of been all over the place with different vlogs, but we will come back once I'm reading another book for Magical Readathon. It won't be too long, but I do have my birthday weekend and my birthday read of Direbound to do first. So I think that vlog will honestly probably come out before this one. So anyway, but we're going to get back to Direbound, and then once I'm once again reading books for this vlog, I will let you know. Also, critical update, we made our second loaf of sourdough bread, and it was a cheddar thyme loaf. It's quite tasty. It's quite tasty. I just had another slice and toasted it up, and it's so good. So I have picked up the next book for this vlog, and it is Firebird by Juliet Cross. I'm going to try to do this without a bunch of glare. I'm just going to put this down. You can kind of see the cover, but I'm worried about the glare, so I'm just going to put this down real quick. So we have started our next one, and one thing to know about this one, check the trigger warnings. This one is dark, so this isn't a lighter romantasy. This one is definitely dark and involves a slave owner dynamic here with the relationship. So know that going in. If that's not something you want to read, don't pick this one up. Anyway, so the blurb doesn't entirely make that clear, which is something that should be very clear from the blurb. And so I've had the hindsight, or the benefit of hindsight, from people who have read this and being surprised about the relationship dynamic and saying, I didn't necessarily want to read this. Like, I should have known going in, because I'm someone who likes to know what I'm going into when I read a book. And so they'd wanted to know that going in. So I've had the benefit of knowing from those comments and from those reviews and from those people saying that what I'm getting into with this one. And so, you know, if you like darker romantasy, great, maybe one for you. If not, maybe one to avoid. So check the trigger warnings and just know that going in. Anyway, so we have our MMC Melina. She has this ability to kind of imbue emotions into people, which is a super interesting ability. So she can kind of sense emotions, but also if she wants someone to feel fear or feel homesickness or something, she can kind of give them that emotion or make them feel that emotion. And so the people that she's from, or the people that she was born into, have been conquered in battle. And so she actually grew up after that with a different group of people who kind of took her in. And she's been performing with them. She and her adopted sisters dance, and the group kind of does different performances and kind of goes around doing these performances. And at one point, the prologue is her dancing for, or in front of, along with a bunch of other people, our MMC. So Julian is our MMC. And so he's there when she's performing at one point. They have an interaction after that, and he gives her this gold coin that's super special to him. And this is a Romanesque world, like a very explicit Roman-inspired society. Like Caesar is emperor, kind of like directly drawing from Roman society. And so that's what I mean when it's like we're going historical here. It's a very specific place and time. And so our MMC sees our FMC dance. It's sometime later, and the people that she had been going around with have now also been conquered in battle by our MMC. So the MMC, so Julian is a commander in the army. He's also the nephew to Caesar. And so he's a commander in the army and has finally been able to defeat this group of people that Melina is a part of. And one of the things that they've used to avoid being, caught in battle or losing in battle thus far is Melina's ability to imbue emotion. So she could imbue the Roman soldiers with fear and homesickness, which is why I mentioned those earlier. And have that affect what they did in the battle. And so they've been able to elude the Roman forces so far. But after, it's some years after the prologue, and, it's after this battle where he has finally been able to conquer this group of people. And he comes across her, and some of the other Roman soldiers are going to try to do something not great. And of course, a lot of the people who are still alive are probably going to be sold as slaves. Like, not great things going to be happening, right? And so one of the things about the Romans, people in power, there are different classes, kind of, or like there's a hierarchy here, but different people can shift into dragons. So Julian is one of them, who can shift into, and he can shift into one of the most powerful types of dragons. And so that's part of one element here too that is kind of fun. I like this dragon shifter element here. I like Melina's magic. And so he takes her away from the battlefield, like transforms into his dragon form, which he isn't really keen to do on the battlefield because he's the commander. He's not supposed to really fight at that point, and he is supposed to kind of have pride and honor in the fact that he didn't have to threaten people with his dragon form, that he's he's powerful enough on his own in a human form to have people listen to him and do what he says. And so normally he doesn't shift into a dragon in battles because he's powerful enough and people fear him enough that he doesn't have to. This time he does, and he takes her away and brings him to her house to be a slave in his house. And so she's meeting some of the other slaves in this house, trying to get her bearings, and there's this kind of connection between them, in part because of what happened before. It's like hearkening back to the connection that they had before when they first met in the prologue. And so there's this kind of connection between them, but there still is, of course, this dynamic of her being his slave, right? And so she's kind of getting her bearings. She's trying to figure out her new situation, trying to see if there are any opportunities to escape. So that's kind of what's going on with her. Meanwhile, Julian is trying to figure out ways to overthrow his uncle. So his uncle's, of course, awful. And so he is trying to collude with people to take him down. And so, we're seeing some of the politics going on there. We're seeing Caesar a little bit in a few scenes here and there. kind of knowing some things that he's done. We're seeing Julian meet with different people and try to have some conversations in the vein of him figuring out how to take down Caesar. So I'm intrigued by the politics. I'm intrigued by their dynamic. Just know going in that this is a dark romantasy so that you know what you're getting yourself into if you want to read it. So those are the thoughts I have so far, but I'm intrigued and definitely excited to continue and see what happens with this political situation and how that intersects with the change in their dynamic and their relationship, or how that evolves. So yeah. Anyway, I will come back once I have read some more, but I am so I'll look into it a bit more than a third into it, not quite halfway, in that ballpark. So I'll come back once I have more thoughts. So here to check in before I read too much. I have finished Firebird by Julia Cross. I did also film part of my most of my TBR video. I need to do one additional clip, but I filmed most of it and have since unwrapped Firebird and Metal Slinger. So I actually have my copies unwrapped now and can hold them up. So finished Firebird. Absolutely loved this one. I was having so much fun. I was really, really, really into this one. So I think I gave kind of the basics of what was going on towards the beginning, and her being brought to Julian's house, that dynamic there, and there's political situations going on. He's wanting to overthrow Caesar, and she ultimately decides that she wants to help, and so they get embroiled in different politics that's going on. And I just love kind of the setting, the world, this Roman-inspired world, the dragon shifter element, and kind of the magic that's involved there. I just had so much fun with this one. I'm not gonna lie. It was a ton of fun. I have since picked up Metal Slinger and am a solid chunk. Can you even see my bookmark in there? Anyway, I'm a solid chunk into Metal Slinger, so I wanted to go ahead and check in on this one before I just completely breeze through this whole thing. I've been cleaning, so I started this yesterday. Got a bit read yesterday, but I've also been cleaning the bathrooms this morning and afternoon. It takes a while, so I've been listening for a decent amount of time and need to check in. So this one has also been a ton of fun so far. So we're following Bryn, and she lives amongst a group of people who don't live on land. So they live in this kind of grove-like area. So, the seabed is pretty shallow. There are trees and stuff growing up, and they've built this kind of network of platforms in between the trees, and that's kind of their home base. They've been exiled by the different kingdoms or the different groups on land. They've been exiled to this place, and so they live in this grove. And once a year, one of the kingdoms holds this huge market, and they invite the guards of this exiled kingdom that Bryn lives in. They invite the guards to come to this market once a year. That's pretty much their only interaction and all that they allow them to do to help pick up supplies, things like that. And so it's a very tenuous situation. And so all of the recruits the guard recruits at one point get the opportunity to go on this. And then once you're actually a guard, a select group of guards will be chosen to go to this market. And so Bryn and some of the other people who are in her kind of group are going to this market. And of course, a situation happens. She's accused of stealing, and some weird things happen. They manage to escape. There's potentially going to be a harsh punishment for her stealing, but she's been framed. And so she's trying to get out of it. They manage to get out of this situation and kind of flee, but they're worried about this tenuous piece between these groups and what that might result in. And if they can't go to this market, how they're going to get supplies and things that they need. And anyway, so she's kind of involved in a little bit of what's going on there. There's this matching ceremony, like a wedding ceremony kind of thing that's coming up. So she's intended to marry the son of kind of the leader of this group. And so he's going to be the next leader of this group. And so his parents aren't totally on board with this because she actually isn't originally from this group. She, isn't native to them. They kind of took her in. And so, she's not completely viewed as one of them, but, ultimately they're going to be matched. And then, lo and behold, a ship from the place where this market is held, a ship comes from this place, and it's a very small group of people. They say they come in peace. They're put in the brigs or kind of in the, holding cells. And the person who's there wants to speak with Bryn. And Bryn goes to see what's going on, and lo and behold, it's the person who framed her for stealing and tried to hurt her, get her arrested. And she's like, what the heck is going on? And he is starting to tell her some things about who she is, and he can't really say much because he's taken a blood promise or some sort of promise to not say certain things, so he has to be careful about what he says. But he's basically indicating that there's more to who she is and to the people that she's around and has been raised by than meets the eye. And she is starting to see some indications that he's potentially right. And so when a storm is coming and he might kind of drown in the process because the tide is going to go up so much and he's in this cell, she ends up breaking him out because she wants to know more about potentially who she is, what he means, and what role does magic potentially play in certain things that are going on. And so she wants to learn more about herself. She wants to learn more about magic, but ends up needing to escape. And so that's really all I'll say kind of about the setup. And so she has escaped with this person, with this dude, and, is wanting to find out more about what's going on. So I'm very intrigued to see what's going on, very intrigued to see more about who she is and the magic in this world and what magic she might have. And anyway, very intrigued. So yeah, fortunately I'm done cleaning the bathrooms and I'm tired, so I'm gonna go chill for a little bit, drink some water because I need to drink some water, and just listen to a bit more of this. So I'm gonna do that, but just wanted to give a check-in before I just breeze through this whole thing and it was like, by the way, done with another book. Anyway, so here to wrap up this vlog, I have finished Metal Slinger, and I would be by my bookshelves and have books in the background, but it's really cloudy outside right now, so this is the only place where the lighting is somewhat decent. So anyway, we're just going to roll with this and hope that I can make something out of this thumbnail. But I have finished Metal Slinger and was absolutely obsessed with this one. I had so much fun following Bryn and Acre. I kind of gave a basic setup here and why, the circumstances around them leaving where Bryn lives and some of the politics behind that. But I was having so much fun meeting some new people as they're traveling, dealing with some of this politics and what was going on at the end. Oh my gosh, obviously I won't spoil anything, but there had been maybe, looking back on it, maybe a couple of seeds that this might be a potential direction that the author could go with this one. And oh my gosh, I'm so excited for Light Builder to come out soon, and I will absolutely be picking it up because are you kidding me with that ending? So yeah, I had a ton of fun with this one. This is particularly perfect, at least for me and my taste in seasonal reading. This is particularly perfect for summer. It's because it's ship, sea, water based very much so. And so that's when I tend to read those types of fantasy stories is in the summer, but this was so much fun. So definitely very excited to continue with that series. So let's do a quick recap of the prompts that I'm using all of these for. So Firebird was for a temperature word in the title. And I know for some, fire wasn't close enough. I was actually watching some other vlogs where people were rejecting Firebird in the title, and there are a few popular books going around now with Firebird in the title. Rejecting it is not quite close enough. This is as close as I can come though with what's on my physical TBR. So we're just gonna roll with it. It's not like G's gonna come for anyone, and we'll just count it as close enough. I know fire is, of course, related to a temperature word. Hot, cold, some other things that G had mentioned, like related to hot, but maybe in and of itself, not a temperature word, but it's fine. And then 0 days was the inscription class to read a day of the week in the title was the prompt for that one. And again, that was one that I just kind of had to get close enough with days at least being in the title. So again, we're rolling with the theme of it's close enough and on my physical TBR. So let's get my physical TBR down. And then, so there was also verse, spells, and incantation, reading something on the bestseller list. So that is going to be one I'm working on next with my Sarah J. Maas reading. I'm currently on A Court of Wings and Ruin, which is on the bestseller list. So I could also go with that one. But so is Throne of Glass. And so, both of those books that will be in an upcoming Sarah J. Maas verse episode 2, we'll cover that one. And for restoration, that was this one. So ask for some 5-star titles and see what you get. So this was just kind of on Instagram. There were several people that I was seeing go through some recent 5 stars that were mentioning Metal Slinger. And so that's kind of what I was going with there. And then for Laura was a dystopian. This again was a different vlog. So a couple that are in a different vlog, 3 of them that are in here. So I did read Conform by Ariel Sullivan and started a dystopian vlog. I've not read another dystopian yet, so I've yet to continue that vlog. But when I do read another dystopian, which I had really high hopes that I could get to this month, but I'm definitely not going to get to it in the month of April. Whatever. So those were the prompts that I was using for some of this. So I will have accomplished everything by the end of April once I finish this one and Throne of Glass, which I plan to do. So anyway, had so much fun with all of these books, and thank you so much for watching this vlog. Let me know if you participated in Magical Readathon. I would love to know what career you're going for. And if I hadn't mentioned in the beginning, this was for, is it Scribe? Is that what it's called? Anyway, let me know if you're participating in Magical Readathon and what your career or calling is and what you've been enjoying reading for some of the prompts for that one. I would absolutely love to know. But again, we're going to wrap this up here and say thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe for more bookish content. I, again, have another Massverse vlog in the works, so be tuned for that. I also have another vlog that will be coming up soon, and I think I'm going to be posting my TBR video before I post any more vlogs, so my May TBR video will actually probably be up by the time I get this up. So anyway, subscribe to continue, and watch some of these vlogs and watch the TBR game craziness. And I will put my Instagram down below. I've been super active there. I will also leave my Pango bookstore if you want to check out what used books I have there. I've got some great ones on there. And also we'll put my Etsy shop down below, and we'll hopefully get some more designs up there soon. And I will also leave more information about how you can support the Black Lives Matter movement, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.